This week, US President Barack Obama warned that the US faced economic disaster if Congress did not act quickly on his proposed economic stimulus package. Just 24 hours later, Democrats in the House and Senate had agreed on a single stimulus plan worth $789 billion. But is it enough? Or is it just throwing good money after bad? Someone who knows a good thing or two about good money is Jim Rogers. He became a Wall Street legend after co-founding the Quantum Hedge Fund in 1970 with George Soros. In a decade, Quantum Fund gained 4,200%. That's 4,200%. And he's with us now, joining us from Singapore. Jim, welcome.
I am delighted to be here.
Tell me something, first of all, from that intro. Will the stimulus package work, be a plus, or is it not effective?
No, it's a negative. They're making things worse. They have been throwing money out the window for 2 years now, and it has done no good. Things continue to get worse. It's going to continue to. It's exactly the same mistake the Japanese made in the 90s. The Japanese spent gigantic amounts of money, and they would not let people fail. They propped up banks. They propped up zombie companies, and they still haven't recovered 19 years later. We won't either.
What would you have done if you'd been in the president's position? What measure would you have brought in?
I would have let them all fail. I would have let the people who were incompetent and who were insolvent, I would have let them fail. The way the system is supposed to work, when times like this come, the solvent people, the competent people, take over the assets from the incompetent people, and then you start over again from a sound base. This is what South Korea did, Russia, a few other countries did it this way, and they did fine. What they're doing this time is they're taking the assets away from the competent people and giving them to the incompetent people and saying, now you compete with the competent people with their assets and their money. It's terrible economics, and it is horrible morality. Not that politicians care about morality, but it's not going to work. It hasn't worked before, and it's not going to work this time.
But was there any alternative to saving some of these people? Because wouldn't in a democracy the pressures not to let so many companies go to the wall, go down, would be too great?
Of course, it would have been a horrible year or two, but David, we've had a terrible 10 years of excess. When you have periods of excess like this, you don't just shrug it off and say after 6 months, well, everything will be okay now. Somebody has to pay a price when you have gigantic, long periods of excess. Yes, America and the UK would have had a very bad 2 or 3 years, just as Korea had a very bad 2 or 3 years, just as Russia did, just as Mexico did. But then they came out of it much better off. America would not have had fun, I assure you. But it's better to do it this way than to have 13 years of bad times, or 20 years, or whatever it's going to turn out to be.
Who do you blame for the current situation? Do you blame bankers, or do you blame the power now aggregated to hedge funds, one of your fields? What do you blame for the current crisis? Or politicians? Who do you blame?
Well, it starts with the central bank in the United States. The central bank in the United Federal Reserve would not let people fail. In 1998, a huge fund got in trouble, hedge fund, long-term capital manager. Everybody called up Greenspan and said, save me, save me, save me. Had he let long-term capital management collapse in 1998, Bear Stearns would still be in business. Lehman Brothers would still be in business because they would have taken such a hit, and so many people would have been fired, some of these bozos who were doing this sort of thing, that you would not have had these problems now. Fannie Mae would still be in existence. All of these firms would be, but because Alan Greenspan would not let people fail for 15 years, that's why the system doesn't. He never let the system work. The way the system is supposed to work is when you make a mistake, you go broke. He refused to let people go broke. He saved his friends, and now we're all having to pay for it. The other people, of course, well, it's the same thing. It's the regulators, the government regulators. They were supposed to be looking after the banks on Wall Street. It's not the hedge funds, David. The hedge funds had nothing to do with this. The banks are the ones that are terribly, terribly, terribly regulated, and that's where the problems are because the regulators didn't know what they were doing.
Is there any way in a situation like this still to make money if you invest wisely? Can you make money in this situation?
Always ways you can make money. Even in the 1930s and the Great Depression, there were people who came out of that with great fortunes. Some of the great fortunes in finance and industry were developed and built during the 30s. So of course there are. If you know something and you've got a good idea, you should pursue it. If you know about water treatment in Asia, for instance, you're going to make a fortune no matter what happens in the rest of the world. If you're in agriculture, you're going to make a fortune over the next 20 or 30 years. Farming has been a horrible business, David, for 30 years. It's about to be one of the best businesses. If you're going to be on the Wall Street or the City of London, get yourself a tractor and learn how to farm.
Talking of the City of London, your advice a little while back was to get out of sterling, and people have looked at the day and the figure that if you had $1 billion, you'd have lost $49 million by now because the sterling did better than it was expected. Not great, but better than expected. Do you still think people should get out of sterling? I feel unpatriotic even mentioning it.
Well, listen, I love the UK as well, don't worry, but I had some wonderful times in the UK. When I said get out of sterling, I didn't mean that day, David. I sold my sterling 6 months ago or a year ago. No, but I do not see a great future for the pound sterling or for the UK balance of trade over the next 5, 10, 15 years. I don't like saying it, but people have to be realistic. You cannot invest with what you would like to happen. You have to invest on facts.
And do you think the world organizations will be a help or not, like the World Bank and the IMF and all of those? Do you have any respect for them?
Zero. The best thing that would happen if we could abolish the World Bank and the IMF, you know, they were set up in 1945 and 6 with very sound goals and very sound aspirations. They have far, far, far left behind those aspirations and goals. They're now run by people who do little more than take care of themselves, their own pensions, their own perks, their own salaries. If you work for the IMF or the World Bank, you have a great life. But they've not done much for the rest of the world. You look at their projects and you would be mortified.
Well, it's a joy. I suppose it's a mixed pleasure in one sense from the bad news that's been contained in this interview, but it's a delight to talk to you, and you explain these things so clearly and pungently that I hope we talk again very soon. Thank you very much, Jim.
So do I. Thank you very much.